No one understood what was said, until the black janitor responded, and the billionaire changed everything. Sharon Mitchell gripped the cleaning rag tightly as she tried to focus on her work, but her hands trembled slightly. The conversation happening in the meeting room of Ferndale Metalworks was taking a turn she never imagined she would witness. It was when she heard the words in Arabic coming from the man in the white robe that her life changed forever. What he had just said made her blood run cold, and she had to lean against the wall to keep from dropping the bucket of water and dirtying the marble floor. The room was full of important people. On the right side of the table, Margaret Ferndale, the company owner, gestured nervously as she spoke with her daughter Jennifer, a 35-year-old lawyer who had returned from Boston to help with the family business. On the left side, Ahmed Al-Mansouri, an Arab businessman who had arrived from Dubai the previous week, spoke quietly with his 3 advisors, all wearing expensive suits and serious expressions. Sharon knew that room better than anyone. For 15 years she had cleaned every corner of that space, had witnessed meetings that defined the fate of hundreds of families who depended on the metalworks. She knew when things were going well by the tone of people's voices, by how they sat, by the smiles that appeared naturally. Today, however, there was a different tension in the air. The company had been going through difficulties for 2 years. Sharon had seen Margaret lose weight, appear with deep dark circles, stay late at the office working on spreadsheets and documents. The employees whispered in the hallways about possible layoffs, about machines that needed urgent maintenance, but there was no money, about bills piling up in the administration files. When Ahmed arrived with his purchase offer, many saw a light at the end of the tunnel. He offered an amount that would cover all debts and still leave a considerable sum for Margaret to restart her life. He promised to keep all jobs, modernize the equipment, and expand operations. It seemed too good to be true. Sharon knew how to speak Arabic because she had worked for 7 years in the home of the Al-Zara family, who lived in Gary between 2010 and 2017. The lady of the house, Fatima, was a kind woman who insisted on teaching Portuguese to her daughters while learning the local language. In return, she taught Arabic to Sharon, saying it was important for people to communicate heart to heart, not just through professional translators. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like, and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now continuing. However, what Sharon had just heard made the entire hopeful scenario crumble like a house of cards. Ahmed had turned to one of his advisors and whispered in Arabic, "When we sign tomorrow, we'll shut everything down in 6 months. I just need the facilities for the materials warehouse. These Americans are so naive, they believe any promise." The official translator, a thin man with glasses named Derek, was sitting in a chair in the corner of the room, but he clearly hadn't understood the comment. He just smiled and took notes of what was said in Portuguese. Sharon realized that Ahmed had strategically chosen that moment to make the comment when Derek was distracted organizing his papers. Margaret continued explaining the history of the company, about how her late husband Harold had started with just 2 machines in a rented warehouse. Her eyes shone when she spoke of the first contracts, the difficulties overcome, the employees who had been there from the beginning. Ahmed nodded, showing interest and respect, but Sharon now knew it was all a cruel performance. Jennifer was reviewing contracts on her tablet, making notes, and occasionally interrupting her mother to clarify technical points. She had returned to her hometown specifically to help with this negotiation, leaving a promising job at an international law firm. The family had invested all their hopes in that deal. Sharon tried to continue cleaning the windows, but her movements were mechanical. Her mind worked frantically, trying to process what to do with the devastating information she had just received. She knew each of the company's 87 employees. She had celebrated birthdays, births, weddings. She had comforted people in difficult times, shared modest lunches in the cafeteria. The conversation in the room continued for another hour. Ahmed asked detailed questions about the equipment, existing contracts, the logistics of the location. Each question now had a sinister meaning for Sharon. He wasn't interested in continuing production. He was assessing what he could salvage for his own purposes. When the meeting ended, everyone stood up and exchanged warm greetings. Margaret shook Ahmed's hand with evident gratitude in her eyes. Jennifer handed over a folder with additional documents he had requested. The translator Derek organized his materials and confirmed he would return the next day for the final signing. Sharon finished cleaning the room in silence, her ears attentive to any additional conversation. When Ahmed left with his aides, she discreetly followed them down the hallway, pretending to clean the pictures on the walls. That's when she heard another revealing conversation. One of the aides, a young man with a well-trimmed beard, questioned Ahmed in Arabic. "Don't you think we should at least keep some people working? They seem like good people." Ahmed chuckled softly and replied, "Business is business, Khalil. Feelings don't pay our bills. I need to recover the money I lost with that failed project in Memphis. This factory will give me exactly what I need, a strategic location to distribute imported products without having to worry about salaries and benefits." Sharon felt her stomach churn. She remembered the previous factory where she had worked, which was sold to foreign investors with similar promises. 3 months later, everyone was fired, and the place became a warehouse. Dozens of families were left without income overnight, including hers. That night, Sharon could barely sleep. She lived in a simple house in the East Side neighborhood of Gary, with her 22-year-old daughter, Michelle, and her 5-year-old grandson, Dylan. Michelle worked as a nursing assistant at the local hospital, working night shifts to supplement the family income. Sharon's salary at the metalworks was essential to keeping the bills paid and providing a decent life for the family. During breakfast, Michelle noticed her mother was different. Sharon had always been a communicative person who woke up humming and sharing plans for the day. But that morning, she just stirred her coffee without drinking it, looking out the kitchen window with a worried expression. "Mom, did something happen at work?" asked Michelle while preparing her son's lunch for school. Sharon hesitated. How to explain the situation without causing premature panic? How to share the weight of that terrible knowledge? She decided to be vague. "There are some changes happening at the company. I don't really know what will come of it yet." Dylan, who was finishing his cereal, looked at his grandmother with big, curious eyes. "Grandma, are you going to keep working at the factory?" The child's innocent question pierced Sharon's heart like a blade. She bent down and hugged her grandson. "Grandma will always find a way to work and take care of you, my love." On her way to work, Sharon observed the familiar streets of Gary. She passed the bakery where she had bought bread for 15 years, the gas station where she knew the attendant, the pharmacy where the clerk always asked about Dylan. That whole routine, that network of relationships built over the years, could collapse if the metalworks closed. She arrived at work determined to observe more closely the interactions between Ahmed and Margaret. If there was a chance, however small, to warn about what was coming, she needed to find it. But how could a janitor interfere in multi-million-dollar negotiations without being seen as crazy or ill-intentioned? The second meeting was scheduled for 10 in the morning. Sharon organized her cleaning schedule to be near the conference room. She arrived half an hour early and began cleaning the adjacent hallways, positioning herself strategically to observe and listen. Margaret arrived punctually, accompanied by Jennifer and the company's accountant, Mr. Frank, a 68-year-old man who had worked with the family for over 20 years. Frank had known Harold Ferndale when the company was still a dream, had followed every phase of its growth, every crisis overcome. His eyes also showed the hope that this deal would bring stability for the final years of his career. Ahmed arrived a few minutes later, again accompanied by his 3 advisors and the translator Derek. Sharon observed the body language of everyone present. Margaret was visibly nervous but tried to maintain her composure. Jennifer reviewed documents with the typical concentration of experienced lawyers. Ahmed, on the other hand, was relaxed and confident, like someone who knows the final outcome of a match before it even begins. The meeting began with formalities. Derek translated the initial greetings and confirmed all documents were in order. Margaret thanked them again for the opportunity and reiterated her hope that the partnership would be beneficial for both sides. It was then that Ahmed turned to one of his advisors and made a comment in Arabic that made Sharon clench the cleaning rag tightly. "This afternoon, I'll call that demolition company. I want them to come assess how much it will cost to tear down the oldest part of the factory. I'll need more space for the containers." Sharon felt a mix of anger and despair. Not only was Ahmed planning to close the company, he was already organizing the physical destruction of the place that represented decades of work and dedication. She thought of Harold Ferndale, who had laid brick by brick in the original construction, and imagined how Margaret would feel if she knew everything would be demolished. The meeting continued with discussions about payment schedules and transfer of responsibilities. Ahmed seemed especially interested in speeding up the process, suggesting the final signing happen on Friday instead of the following Monday, as initially planned. "Why the rush?" asked Jennifer, showing a lawyer's natural suspicion. Derek translated the question, and Ahmed answered in Portuguese mixed with some English words. "International market very fast. Opportunities don't wait. Better secure deal soon." But when Ahmed thought no one was paying attention, he whispered to an advisor in Arabic, "I need to finalize this before that journalist from New York publishes the story about our financial problems in the United States. If they find out I'm being investigated for tax evasion, they'll cancel everything." Sharon almost dropped the bucket of water. The information she had just heard completely changed the situation. Ahmed wasn't just planning to deceive Margaret. He was fleeing legal troubles and using the purchase of the metalworks as a form of money laundering or financial escape. The revelation made Sharon rethink the entire strategy. It was no longer just about warning of future layoffs. Margaret could be entering a situation that would legally compromise her. If Ahmed was being investigated for tax crimes, any transaction with him could bring serious legal consequences for the Ferndale family. During the lunch break, Sharon saw Margaret and Jennifer talking animatedly in the office. Through the slightly open door, she heard Jennifer saying, "Mum, it's going to be an incredible fresh start for our family. With that money you can retire peacefully and I can open my own law office here in the city." Margaret smiled for the first time in months. "Your father would be proud to know we managed to turn his dream into a solid foundation for the next generations." The words cut Sharon's heart. How could she allow two hard-working women to fall into such a cruel trap? But at the same time, how could a simple janitor interfere in complex negotiations without being seen as meddlesome or, worse yet, as someone trying to sabotage the deal out of envy or resentment? Sharon decided to try an indirect approach. That afternoon, when Margaret was alone in her office reviewing papers, she knocked on the door and asked permission to clean. "Of course, Sharon. Come in, please," said Margaret with a tired smile. Sharon began organizing the bookshelves, trying to find the courage to start a conversation. "Mrs. Margaret, may I ask a question?" "Of course. Go ahead." "Have you researched this Arab businessman's past? About other companies he's bought?" Margaret stopped writing and looked at Sharon with curiosity. "Why do you ask that?" Sharon felt her heart race. "It's just that, well, I worked at a company that was sold to foreigners a few years ago. They promised to keep everything running, but then what, Sharon? They shut everything down in no time. They said it was just reorganization, but they actually wanted to use the space for other things." Margaret became thoughtful for a moment. "Every situation is different, Sharon. Ahmed seems very interested in keeping our operation running. He asked many technical questions, showed knowledge about the sector." Sharon nodded, but internally she knew Ahmed's technical questions had completely different objectives than Margaret imagined. She decided not to press further at the moment, but the seed of doubt had been planted. Later, when she was cleaning the bathroom near the meeting room, Sharon overheard a phone conversation of Ahmed's that left her even more alarmed. He was speaking in Arabic with someone, probably in Dubai. "Yes, Father. Everything will work out. I'll get the money to cover that hole in the company account before the auditors notice. This American factory will be sold off in pieces. The land is worth much more than the business itself. I already have interested buyers for the area to build a shopping center." The conversation revealed that Ahmed wasn't just deceiving Margaret about keeping the company running. He was using the purchase to solve serious, possibly criminal personal financial problems. Sharon realized she was facing a much more dangerous situation than she had initially imagined. That night, at home, Sharon couldn't hide her worry any longer. Michelle insisted that her mother tell her what was happening. After much hesitation, Sharon revealed part of the truth. "Honey, I think the company is going to be sold to people who are not trustworthy. I might lose my job very soon. Michelle was worried but tried to reassure her mother. "Mom, you've always been an exemplary employee. Even if the owner changes, they'll need someone to clean and organize everything." Sharon didn't have the courage to say that Ahmed planned to close everything down. Instead, she decided she needed to act more concretely. But how? An idea began to form in her mind, but it would require courage and a lot of care not to backfire against herself. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now continuing. The next day, Wednesday, Sharon arrived at work with a plan. She had spent the night researching Ahmed al-Mansouri and his company online. What she discovered confirmed her worst suspicions. On news sites from Dubai, she found references to investigations into questionable financial practices. Although the articles were in English and Arabic, Sharon managed to understand enough to realize Ahmed was involved in scandals involving immigrant workers and tax evasion. More importantly, she found news about other companies Ahmed had bought in Latin America. The pattern was always the same: promises of expansion and modernization, followed by quick closure and asset sales. Hundreds of people had lost their jobs, and several families had been financially ruined. Sharon discreetly printed a few pages at the public library before going to work. Her plan was to leave the information in a strategic place where Margaret or Jennifer might find it, but she needed to do it in a way that couldn't be traced back to her. During the morning, she noticed that Jennifer had the habit of reviewing documents in the records room during her coffee break. It was a more private location where she could concentrate without interruptions. Sharon decided she would leave the information there, as if someone had accidentally forgotten it. But before she could execute her plan, another meeting was called. Ahmed had called in the morning saying he needed to accelerate the timeline even more. He wanted to sign the contracts on Thursday, meaning the very next day. The sudden urgency made Margaret nervous. "Why the rush?" she asked Jennifer as they prepared for the meeting. "I don't know, Mom. It could be that he has other investment opportunities and doesn't want to waste time, or maybe he has scheduling issues." Sharon, who was cleaning the nearby hallway, knew exactly why Ahmed was in a hurry. She had overheard another phone conversation the previous morning, where he mentioned that auditors from his company in Dubai were scheduled to review the accounts next Monday. He needed the sale money deposited before that date. The meeting began tensely. Ahmed seemed agitated and impatient, different from the calm, confident demeanor of previous days. His advisors were also visibly uncomfortable, whispering among themselves and constantly checking their phones. Derek, the translator, began the session by explaining the changes to the timeline. Margaret and Jennifer exchanged worried looks, but didn't question it directly. Frank, the accountant, made some observations about the need for time to verify bank documents, but Ahmed insisted everything was in order. It was then that Sharon overheard the conversation that changed everything. One of Ahmed's advisors, clearly uncomfortable with the situation, questioned in Arabic, "Ahmed, are you sure we should continue with this? The investigations in Dubai are intensifying. If they discover we used company money for personal business, we'll all go to jail." Ahmed replied sharply, "Khalil, keep your mouth shut. When I get this money, I'll transfer everything to offshore accounts. In 6 months, I'll be living in Switzerland, and you will be too, if you stay quiet and cooperate." Sharon felt her legs tremble. This wasn't just about deceiving Margaret about the company's future. Ahmed was confessing to serious financial crimes and using the metalworks as part of an international escape scheme. The conversation continued, but Sharon was losing her focus. Her mind raced, trying to decide what to do. She could no longer afford to act discreetly. Margaret was about to sign contracts that would not only destroy the company, but could potentially implicate her legally as an unwitting accomplice to financial crimes. At that moment, Ahmed made a comment that shattered Sharon's last barrier of hesitation. He turned to another advisor and said in Arabic with a cruel smile, "These Americans are so desperate they'd accept anything. The woman is almost crying with gratitude. She has no idea she'll be investigated by the Internal Revenue Service when they discover where the money I'm using came from." Sharon could no longer control herself. Her hands shook with indignation. Margaret didn't deserve to be humiliated and deceived like that. Harold Ferndale had built that company with honesty and hard work. The 87 families who depended on the metalworks didn't deserve to lose everything because of the greed and criminality of one unscrupulous man. Suddenly the room fell silent. Everyone looked at the door where Sharon stood with a cleaning bucket in her hands, clearly agitated. Margaret was the first to speak. "Sharon, is everything all right? You look pale." Sharon looked at Margaret, then at Jennifer, then at Ahmed. The Arab businessman watched her with an intrigued expression, as if trying to understand why a simple janitor seemed so upset. It was then that Ahmed made a fatal mistake. Thinking he was being funny for his advisors, he commented in Arabic, "Look how even the cleaning lady is worried about her bosses. What a touching scene. In 6 months, she'll be looking for another job, but at least today she's showing loyalty." The words were like a slap in the face to Sharon. Ahmed wasn't just stealing and lying, he was mocking the dignity of working people. He was ridiculing a genuine employee's concern for her family and co-workers. Sharon took a deep breath. She knew what she was about to do would change her life forever, but she could no longer stay silent. "Excuse me," she said, stepping fully into the room. Everyone looked at her in surprise. Derek, the translator, seemed confused by the interruption. Ahmed smiled condescendingly, expecting Margaret to reprimand the employee for interrupting an important meeting. But Sharon wasn't looking at Margaret. Her eyes were fixed on Ahmed, and when she began to speak, it was in perfect Arabic. "Mr. Al-Mansouri, I understood every word you've said since you arrived here. I understood that you plan to close the company in 6 months, fire all the employees, and use the facilities only as a warehouse. I understood that you are fleeing investigations in Dubai, and that you want to use this purchase to launder money stolen from your own company." The silence in the room was deafening. Ahmed instantly paled, his eyes wide with shock and fear. His advisors froze, unsure how to react. Derek dropped his pen, completely lost about what was happening. Margaret and Jennifer looked from Sharon to Ahmed, trying to process what they had just witnessed. Frank, the accountant, took off his glasses and cleaned them nervously, as if that could help him better understand the situation. Ahmed was the first to recover from the initial shock. His expression shifted from surprise to controlled anger. You speak Arabic?" "Yes, sir. I learned from a very honest family that lived here in Gary. People who taught me that the Arabic language is beautiful when used to tell the truth, not to deceive and steal from hard-working people." Ahmed tried to maintain his composure, but his voice betrayed his nervousness. "You must have misunderstood. Private conversations can be misinterpreted. I didn't misinterpret when you said these Americans are desperate, and that Mrs. Margaret has no idea she'll be investigated by the Internal Revenue Service. I didn't misinterpret when you talked about fleeing to Switzerland with stolen money." The direct accusation made Ahmed lose his composure completely. He rose abruptly from his chair, pointing his finger at Sharon. "You don't know who you're talking to. Who do you think you are to accuse me of—" "Sharon," interrupted Margaret, finding her voice. "Do you really understand Arabic? You understand everything they're saying?" Sharon turned to Margaret with eyes full of tears, but her voice was firm. "Mrs. Margaret, I've worked here for 15 years. You know me. I would never lie about something like this. This man didn't come here to help our company. He came to destroy everything your Harold built." Ahmed tried one last intimidation strategy. "Margaret, don't believe the lies of a disgruntled employee. She clearly has personal problems and is trying to sabotage our business." But the strategy was a mistake. Jennifer, who had remained silent observing the interaction, stood up slowly. As a lawyer, she was trained to read people and situations. Ahmed's defensive and aggressive reaction, contrasted with Sharon's dignified and emotional posture, made it clear who was telling the truth. "Mom," Jennifer said calmly, "I think we need to adjourn this meeting. We have some checks to make." Ahmed realized he was losing control of the situation. "There's nothing to check. We have contracts to sign. Time is money." "Exactly why we can't sign anything in haste," Jennifer replied with professional firmness. "If it's truly a good deal, it can wait for proper due diligence." One of Ahmed's aides, the young man who had questioned the ethics of the plan, whispered something in Arabic to his boss. Sharon heard it and translated immediately. He said they should accept the postponement and leave here before things get more complicated. The instant translation was the final proof that Sharon truly understood everything. Ahmed looked at his aides angrily, knowing he had been completely exposed. Margaret, who until then had been trying to process the situation, finally found her voice. "Ahmed, if there's anything you'd like to clarify about your intentions with our company, now would be the time." Ahmed knew he was cornered. Anything he said could be understood by Sharon, and any lie would be immediately exposed. He chose the most cowardly strategy possible, to get up and leave. "This is an unacceptable insult," he said, gathering his papers quickly. "I won't do business with people who don't trust me and who allow employees to make ridiculous accusations." As Ahmed and his aides headed for the door, Sharon took a step forward. "Mr. Al-Mansouri, one last thing." Ahmed stopped and turned, clearly irritated. "What?" "In Arabic there's a proverb that says, 'A lie has short legs, but truth has wings.' Mrs. Fatima taught me that. She also said that those who use our language to deceive don't deserve to speak Arabic." The comment was like a slap in Ahmed's face. His expression showed a mixture of humiliation and anger. He left the room without saying another word, followed by his embarrassed aides. Derek, the translator, was left behind, completely lost. I didn't understand anything that happened here. Can someone explain it to me?" Margaret approached Sharon, who was still trembling with emotion. "Sharon, you saved our company, you saved our family. How can I thank you?" "Mrs. Margaret, I did nothing but tell the truth. I couldn't stay silent watching you be deceived by such a bad person." Jennifer picked up her phone. "Mom, I need to make some urgent calls. I'm going to look into this Ahmed and his companies. If Sharon's accusations are correct, we need to protect ourselves legally." Frank, the accountant, who had remained silent throughout the confrontation, finally spoke. "Margaret, I had a bad feeling about that man, but I couldn't pinpoint what it was. Sharon just saved not only the company, but possibly our reputation and our freedom." In the hours that followed, Jennifer's investigation confirmed all of Sharon's suspicions. Ahmed Al-Mansouri was indeed under investigation in Dubai for financial irregularities. An international arrest warrant was being prepared. The companies he had bought in Latin America had indeed been shut down and sold off piece by piece. Even more shocking, Jennifer discovered that the money Ahmed was offering came from accounts frozen by Interpol. If Margaret had signed the contract, she could have been charged with receiving stolen goods and money laundering, crimes that would result in years in prison and the seizure of all the family's assets. The news of the discovery spread quickly through the company. The employees, who had been anxious for a resolution to the financial crisis, were initially disappointed. But when they understood that Sharon had saved not only their jobs, but potentially their freedom, the disappointment turned into deep gratitude. Sharon became a silent heroine. Co-workers who had previously only exchanged polite greetings now stopped to thank her personally. The security guard at the gate, Mr. Earl, who had worked there for 20 years, said he had never seen so much courage in one person. But the company's financial situation was still critical. Ahmed had been exposed and neutralized, but the debt still existed. Margaret needed to find a real solution to the metalworks problems. Dear listener, if you are enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now continuing, it was Jennifer who suggested a completely different strategy. Instead of selling the company to a single investor, they could restructure the debts and look for genuine local investors. Business people from Gary who knew the Ferndale family's reputation and had an interest in supporting the local economy. The idea had merit, but it required time and a lot of relationship-building work. Margaret was skeptical. "Honey, I don't have the energy to start from scratch anymore. These 2 years of crisis have drained me." That's when Sharon made another courageous decision. She asked for a private conversation with Margaret and Jennifer. "Mrs. Margaret, I know I don't have the formal training to talk about business, but I know this company better than any outside consultant. I know where each machine performs best. I know which clients are most reliable. I know which suppliers give special terms." Margaret and Jennifer listened with growing attention as Sharon continued. More importantly, I know every employee. I know who has ideas to improve production, who has contacts that could bring in new contracts, who has experience that is being wasted. Jennifer leaned forward, intrigued. Sharon, where are you going with this? I want to propose we do a restructuring from the bottom up. Why don't we ask the employees themselves how they think the company can be improved? Many people here have had ideas for years but have never been heard. The proposal was radical, but it made sense. Margaret had inherited an already structured company and had never really talked to the employees about the day-to-day operations. Her husband Harold was the one who maintained that direct contact, and after his departure, she focused only on administrative and financial aspects. Margaret decided to try. The following week, she organized meetings with small groups of employees, asking for suggestions on how to improve efficiency and reduce costs. The ideas that emerged were surprising. Charles, the most experienced machine operator, suggested changes to the production schedule that could increase efficiency by 20%. Mrs. Regina from the cafeteria proposed a meal system that would reduce costs and improve employee satisfaction. Junior from the warehouse had identified alternative suppliers that offered materials of similar quality for lower prices. But the most impactful suggestion came from Sharon. She proposed that the company offer basic language courses for interested employees, especially English and Spanish. With the experience she had learning Arabic, she knew how communication in other languages could open international business opportunities. We have clients in other Latin American countries, explained Sharon. If some employees knew Spanish, we could serve those clients better and perhaps secure larger contracts. The same goes for English with clients from the United States. Jennifer was impressed with Sharon's strategic vision. It's a brilliant idea. Language knowledge is a competitive advantage that can open markets. Margaret implemented the changes suggested by the employees. Within 3 months, the company's efficiency had improved significantly, and operating costs were reduced by 15%. More importantly, the work environment had transformed. Employees felt valued and involved, resulting in lower absenteeism and higher productivity. The improvement in results caught the attention of legitimate local investors. Unlike Ahmed, these were American entrepreneurs with a proven track record in the region. They offered partnerships instead of a complete buyout, keeping Margaret as the main administrator and preserving all jobs. Sharon, who had become an informal consultant for the company, was officially promoted to a new position, Cultural Communication Coordinator. Her role was to assist in negotiations with international clients and coordinate language programs for employees. The change was transformative for Sharon personally. She began studying at night to obtain formal certificates in foreign languages. Michelle was proud to see her mother, at 52, returning to the classroom with the determination of a young woman. "Mom, you've become an inspiration to me," Michelle said one day during dinner. "I always thought that after 40, you couldn't change careers anymore." Dylan, now 6 years old, enjoyed listening to his grandmother practice different languages at home. He began learning a few words in Arabic and English, saying he wanted to be just like Grandma when he grew up. The success of Ferndale Metalworks restructuring became a case study in the greater Detroit area. Other struggling family businesses sought out Margaret to understand how she had managed the recovery without selling to outside investors. Margaret always made sure to credit Sharon as the person who had made everything possible. She not only saved our company from a scam, she taught us that solutions are often closer than we imagine. Jennifer decided to stay in Gary instead of returning to Boston. The experience of almost losing the family business made her realize she wanted to continue her father's legacy more actively. She opened a law office specializing in helping family businesses, with a special focus on protecting against international fraud. 6 months after the incident with Ahmed, Jennifer received a phone call from Interpol. Ahmed al-Mansouri had been arrested in Chicago, attempting to pull a similar scam on an Argentine company. The agent who called congratulated Jennifer for the report that had prevented more families from being harmed. "Your employee Sharon provided a service not only to your company but to society," said the agent. People like Ahmed can only continue their criminal activities because they rarely encounter someone brave enough to expose them. Ahmed's arrest completely validated Sharon's actions. Any residual doubt about whether she had exaggerated in interpreting the conversations was eliminated. The investigations revealed that Ahmed was involved in an international network of business fraud, having harmed dozens of companies in several countries. Margaret organized a celebration at the company to mark the complete recovery of the business. During the event, she gave an emotional speech about the importance of valuing all employees, regardless of their hierarchical position. Sharon taught us that knowledge and wisdom can come from anywhere, Margaret told the gathered employees. She showed us that we must listen to each other, respect each person's experiences, and never underestimate someone's ability to contribute to our collective success. Sharon, who was in the front row, was moved to hear the words. She thought of Harold Ferndale, who always treated all employees with respect, and felt he would be proud to see how the company had grown stronger through unity and collaboration. The language program proposed by Sharon became a great success. 15 employees signed up for English classes, 10 for Spanish, and, surprisingly, 8 for Arabic. Curiosity about the language that had saved the company motivated many colleagues to want to learn. Sharon became the basic Arabic instructor, teaching not only the language, but also cultural aspects that could be useful in international negotiations. She always emphasized that languages are bridges between people, not weapons to deceive or manipulate. 1 year after the incident, Ferndale Metalworks had not only fully recovered, but also expanded its operations. New international contracts had been signed, largely due to the team's improved communication skills. Margaret, at 62, was more energized than she had been in years. The near catastrophe with Ahmed had taught her to value her company, her employees, and her family more. She began spending more time on the factory floor, talking with employees and learning about operational aspects she had neglected. Jennifer established a partnership with local universities to offer courses on protection against business fraud. Sharon often participated as a speaker, sharing her experience and teaching business owners how to identify suspicious signs in international negotiations. The most important thing, Sharon always said in her talks, is to trust your instincts. If something seems too good to be true, it probably isn't. And if you have knowledge that can help other people, don't be afraid to share it, even if your social position makes others question your credibility. Sharon's talks became popular, not only in Gary, but throughout the greater New York metropolitan area. She received invitations to speak at business associations, unions, and universities. Her message about the importance of valuing unconventional knowledge resonated especially with women and employees in lower hierarchical positions. 2 years after the incident, Sharon received an unexpected invitation. Northwestern University wanted to offer her a scholarship for an international relations course, recognizing her practical contribution to preventing corporate fraud. Initially hesitant due to her age, Sharon was encouraged by Margaret and Jennifer to accept. "Sharon, you are 54 years old and have valuable life experience," argued Jennifer. "You would be one of the most prepared students in the class." Sharon accepted the challenge. She balanced her studies with her work at the metalworks, attending night and weekend classes. Michelle and Dylan were proud to see the family matriarch as a university student and often helped with research and assignments. During her studies, Sharon wrote a monograph on intercultural communication in the prevention of corporate fraud. The work analyzed how linguistic and cultural differences are exploited by international criminals and how companies can protect themselves through better cultural preparation of their employees. The monograph was so well received that Sharon was invited to turn it into a book. With the support of Margaret, who financed the publication, Between Languages and Business, How a Janitor Saved a Company became a regional bestseller. The book attracted national and international attention. Sharon began receiving invitations to speak in other states and even in other countries. Her story inspired documentaries, academic articles, and television programs about the importance of valuing diverse knowledge in the corporate environment. Margaret, seeing the positive impact the story was having, decided to further formalize the changes in the company. She created the Harold Ferndale Knowledge Valorization Program, where any employee could propose improvements and would be rewarded for successfully implemented ideas. The program resulted in dozens of minor innovations that collectively transformed the company. Ferndale Metalworks became a model of participatory management, studied by business schools and visited by entrepreneurs interested in replicating the model. 3 years after the fraud attempt, Ahmed Al-Mansouri was sentenced to 15 years in prison for international financial crimes. Sharon was cited in the trial as one of the key witnesses who helped build the case against him. The judge commented that the courage of an ordinary person had prevented dozens of other families from being harmed. Sharon graduated in international relations at 57 with academic honors. Her graduation was celebrated by the entire company and community. Margaret and Jennifer were in the front row at the ceremony, proud to see the woman who had saved their company receiving the academic recognition she deserved. During her graduation speech, Sharon spoke about the importance of never underestimating anyone based on appearances or social positions. Knowledge has no uniform, wisdom has no title, and courage can come from anyone at any time when they decide that doing the right thing is more important than staying silent. After graduation, Sharon was hired by an international consulting firm specializing in fraud prevention. Her work involved traveling to companies in different countries, training executives and employees on how to identify and prevent scam attempts. The irony was not lost on anyone. The woman who had worked as a janitor for 15 years was now a consultant for multinational companies, teaching executives about corporate security practices. Margaret continued managing the metalworks, but with a completely transformed philosophy. She implemented monthly meetings where any employee could speak directly with management about any subject. She created a continuing education fund that helped employees gain qualifications in their areas of interest. Jennifer expanded her law firm and specialized in international fraud protection cases. She often worked in partnership with Sharon, combining legal expertise with cultural knowledge to help companies protect themselves. Ferndale Metalworks became one of the most respected companies in the region, not only for its technical quality, but for its culture of human appreciation and transparency. Employees from other companies often applied for positions, even if it meant lower salaries, because they wanted to work in an environment where they felt respected and heard. 5 years after the incident with Ahmed, Sharon opened her own consulting firm, Cultural Bridge Consulting. Specializing in intercultural communication and fraud prevention, the company grew rapidly, serving clients throughout the United States and neighboring countries. Michelle, inspired by her mother's transformation, decided to pursue a second degree in business administration. She wanted to better understand the business world to eventually work with Sharon at the consultancy. Dylan, now 10 years old, already spoke Portuguese, English, and basic Arabic, and always said he wanted to be an international consultant like Grandma. Margaret, at 67, began planning her succession in the company. Jennifer would be the new chief administrator, but Margaret wanted to ensure that the culture of human appreciation remained at the heart of the family business. During a succession planning meeting, Margaret made an observation that summarized the entire transformation of recent years. When Harold died, I thought I had lost the heart of our company. I never imagined I would find an even bigger heart through the courage of an employee whom many saw only as the janitor. Sharon, who was present at the meeting as a consultant, replied, "Mrs. Margaret, the heart of the company was always here. We just needed to learn to hear its beat." The observation became the official motto of Ferndale Metalworks, listening to the heart of the company. The phrase was painted at the main entrance and included in all marketing and internal communication materials. 6 years after the initial incident, Sharon's story had inspired changes in dozens of other companies. Programs to value diverse knowledge were implemented in various industries, and the practice of having internal consultations with employees from different hierarchical levels became common. The story also influenced educational policies. Several universities created scholarship programs for non-graduate employees who demonstrated unique knowledge or significant contributions to their companies. The Sharon Mitchell program helped hundreds of people obtain formal education without leaving their jobs. Sharon became a recognized international speaker. Her story was told at business conferences in Europe, North America, and Asia. She always made a point of emphasizing that her experience was not unique, that in every company there are employees with valuable knowledge waiting to be heard. In one of her most memorable lectures delivered at Harvard University, Sharon said, "My story is not about a janitor who knew Arabic. It's about a company that was almost destroyed because it didn't know how to listen. It's about how knowledge exists everywhere, waiting for the right moment to be valued." The Harvard lecture was watched by thousands of people online and went viral on social media. Sharon received invitations for television programs, interviews in international magazines, and requests to speak in more than 20 countries. But the recognition that moved her the most came from an unexpected source. Fatima al-Zahra, the Arabic lady who had taught the language to Sharon years before, made contact after seeing a report about the story. "Sharon, my dear student," Fatima wrote in a touching letter, "I always knew you would use our language for good things. You have honored our language and our culture by using knowledge to protect innocent people. My late husband would be proud to know that we contributed, even indirectly, to your journey." The reunion between Sharon and Fatima was organized at the Metalworks, with Margaret, Jennifer, and all the employees present. Fatima, now living again in Dubai, had traveled specifically to see Sharon. The embrace between the two women symbolized the strength of human connections that transcend cultures and circumstances. During the visit, Fatima planted an olive tree in the company garden, saying it was an Arabic symbol of peace and prosperity. The tree became a landmark at the Metalworks, representing how different cultures can come together to create something beautiful and lasting. 7 years after saving Ahmed's company, Sharon was honored by the Gary City Council as an honorary citizen. The ceremony gathered hundreds of people, including current and former employees of the Metalworks, local business owners, academics, and representatives from international organizations. In her acceptance speech, Sharon reflected on the journey. "When I entered that meeting room 7 years ago, I was just a janitor worried about her company's future. Today I understand I was always more than that. We are all more than our job titles. We all have unique knowledge, valuable experiences, and the ability to make a difference." Margaret, now officially retired but still acting as a company advisor, spoke about how the experience had transformed not only the Metalworks, but her own view of leadership. "Sharon taught me that a true leader is not just someone who makes decisions. It's someone who creates an environment where all voices can be heard." Jennifer, now the company president, announced during the ceremony the creation of the Sharon Mitchell Foundation for Education and Fraud Prevention. The foundation would offer free language courses and scam protection for small business owners and vulnerable communities. The foundation became a life project for Sharon. She reduced her international consulting work to dedicate more time to local social work. She believes teaching ordinary people to protect themselves against fraud is as important as training executives from large corporations. Michelle, now a business administration graduate, officially joined her mother's consulting firm. The mother-daughter duo specialized in cases involving family businesses, combining Sharon's practical experience with Michelle's formal theoretical knowledge. Dylan, at 12 years old, was already showing interest in languages and international cultures. He often accompanied his grandmother to local lectures and always impressed audiences with his ability to speak 4 basic languages. Sharon dreamed that one day he would become a diplomat or professional translator. Ferndale Metalworks continued to prosper under Jennifer's leadership. The company had become an international model of participatory management and fraud prevention. Business delegations from various countries regularly visited to study the methods implemented after Ahmed's near fraud. 8 years after the initial incident, Ahmed al-Mansouri was released from prison after serving part of his sentence. He tried to contact Sharon through a lawyer, claiming he wanted to apologize in person. Sharon refused the meeting, but sent a message through the lawyer. "I hope he uses the time he has left to build instead of destroy." Sharon's response was seen as an example of maturity and forgiveness, qualities she always emphasized in her lectures on intercultural conflict resolution. She believed that holding resentment against Ahmed would be harmful to her own personal and professional growth. During this period, Sharon published her second book, Building Bridges: Intercultural Communication in the Business World. The book became a reference manual in universities and companies, solidifying her position as one of the leading experts in intercultural communication in the United States. The book was translated into English, Spanish, and Arabic, reaching international markets. Sharon received invitations to speak at the United Nations, the World Bank, and various U.S. embassies around the world. Fatima al-Zahra became a regular collaborator with Sharon, helping to review translations and providing cultural insights for special projects. The friendship between the two women deepened, and they began working together on an ambitious project, a language teaching and cultural exchange center in Gary. The center would be partially funded by the Sharon Mitchell Foundation and partially by donations from local business owners who had benefited from the fraud prevention programs. Margaret and Jennifer were the first to commit to significant donations. 9 years after the incident that changed her life, Sharon inaugurated the Harold Ferndale Cultural Center, named in honor of Margaret's late husband. The center offered language courses, workshops on intercultural communication, and fraud prevention programs for the community. The inauguration was an emotional event, attended by local authorities, business owners, educators, and hundreds of people who had been impacted by Sharon's story. Margaret cut the ceremonial ribbon, saying that Harold would be proud to see his name associated with a project that promoted education and unity among cultures. During the inauguration ceremony, Sharon reflected on the entire journey. 9 years ago, I was a janitor who was afraid to speak. Today, I am an educator who teaches others to find their voices. The change didn't happen because I was special. It happened because I decided that doing the right thing was more important than staying in my comfort zone. The Harold Ferndale Cultural Center quickly became a hub of community activities. In addition to language courses, it offered workshops on entrepreneurship, lectures on consumer rights, and mentorship programs for young people interested in international careers. Sharon developed a special curriculum that combined language teaching with education about business cultures. Students learned not only to speak other languages, but also to understand cultural nuances that could be crucial in negotiations or fraud detection. One of the center's most popular programs was Languages for Everyone, where people of different ages and backgrounds gathered to learn from each other. Executives learned Arabic from Syrian refugees, while homemakers taught Portuguese to Bolivian immigrants. 10 years after saving Ferndale Metalworks, Sharon received a special tribute from the United Nations for her contribution to preventing international financial crimes and promoting intercultural dialogue. The ceremony in New York was attended by diplomats from dozens of countries. In her speech at the UN, Sharon spoke about the importance of valuing local knowledge in the fight against global crimes. International fraud can only be combated when ordinary people have the knowledge and courage to identify it. Every community has unique resources that can contribute to global security. The speech received a standing ovation from the entire audience and was later cited in official UN documents on transnational crime prevention. Sharon became an informal consultant for the organization, contributing to policies protecting small businesses against international fraud. Margaret, now 72 years old, accompanied Sharon to the UN ceremony. During the flight back to the United States, she remarked, "Sharon, when you walked into that meeting room 10 years ago, you saved much more than our company. You saved my faith in humanity." The observation touched Sharon deeply, who replied, "Mrs. Margaret, you gave me something equally valuable, the opportunity to discover that I had a voice worth hearing." Back in the United States, Sharon dedicated herself even more to the work of the Cultural Center. She developed partnerships with international universities to create student exchange programs, allowing young people from Gary to study abroad while foreign students came to learn about American culture. Michelle took on more responsibilities at the consulting firm, allowing Sharon to focus on education and social work. Her daughter had become a respected expert in corporate fraud prevention, often cited in academic publications and invited to give lectures. Dylan, now 15 years old, already spoke 5 languages fluently and had decided he wanted to study international relations like his grandmother. He often volunteered at the cultural center, teaching English to immigrant children. The Mitchell family had become a symbol of transformation and perseverance in the Gary community. Their story inspired other working-class families to value education and never underestimate their own potential. 15 years after the initial incident, Sharon's story was turned into an American film that gained international recognition. The film, titled The Voice That Saved a Company, was selected for the Cannes Film Festival and won awards at several film festivals around the world. Sharon actively participated in the film's production, serving as a consultant to ensure the story was told accurately and with respect. She insisted that the film emphasize the importance of teamwork and valuing all employees, not just her own contribution. During the film's premiere in New York, Sharon took the stage to give thanks. "This film is not about me. It's about all the people who have valuable knowledge, but never had the opportunity to share it. It's about the importance of creating environments where all voices can be heard." The film's reception led to Sharon being invited to international television programs, documentaries, and podcasts. Her message about valuing diverse knowledge resonated especially in times of increasing globalization and complexity in international business. Margaret, Jennifer, and the entire Ferndale Metalworks team attended the film premiere. The company had become an international case study on business recovery and participatory management. Executives from multinational corporations regularly visited to learn about the methods implemented. The film also brought renewed attention to the problem of international corporate fraud. Several organizations reported an increase in demand for prevention training after the film's screening, showing how personal stories can impact public policy and business practices. Sharon used the attention generated by the film to further expand the work of the Sharon Mitchell Foundation. She launched a free online fraud prevention program that reached millions of people in Portuguese-speaking countries. The program included modules on identifying common scams, techniques for verifying business credentials, and guidance on when to seek legal help. Sharon always emphasized that prevention was more effective than recovery after fraud. 20 years after saving Ferndale Metalworks, Sharon was decorated by the U.S. government with the National Medal of Arts, the nation's highest honor for cultural and educational contributions. The ceremony at the White House was broadcast nationally. In her acceptance speech, Sharon dedicated the honor to all American employees who contribute daily to their company's success without proper recognition. This decoration represents millions of American workers who have valuable knowledge waiting to be discovered. Margaret, now 77, was present at the ceremony. Although her mobility was limited, she made a point of accompanying Sharon to the White House. During the reception after the ceremony, she commented to journalists, "Sharon transformed not only my company, but my understanding of what it truly means to value people." Jennifer had expanded Ferndale Metalworks to other U.S. states, always maintaining the principles of participatory management established after the crisis with Ahmed. Each new unit implemented similar programs for valuing diverse knowledge and fraud prevention. The company had become a national leader, not only in product quality, but also in exemplary labor practices. Employees from other companies often applied for positions at Ferndale Metalworks, even if it meant significant geographical moves. Michelle had established a branch of the consultancy in Washington, D.C., focusing on work with government agencies to develop fraud protection policies. Her combined expertise with Sharon's practical experience became a reference for public policymakers. Dylan, now 25 and a graduate in international relations, worked as a diplomat at the State Department. His first international assignment was in Dubai, where he used his grandmother's teachings on intercultural communication to facilitate trade negotiations between the United States and the United Arab Emirates. During a visit to Dubai, Dylan happened to meet Khalil, Ahmed's former aide, who had questioned the ethics of the plan against the metalworks. Khalil, now a legitimate businessman, expressed gratitude for the exposure of Ahmed's crimes. "Your grandmother saved us from becoming accomplices to serious crimes. Today I can look in the mirror without shame." The encounter was reported by Dylan to Sharon, who was moved to learn that her actions had positively impacted even those who were on the other side of the situation. It reinforced her conviction that doing the right thing always has lasting positive consequences. 25 years after the initial incident, Sharon, now 77, published her memoirs, From Mop to Palace, A Life of Discovery. The book became an instant bestseller and was translated into 15 languages. The memories not only told her own story, but also highlighted hundreds of other people she had met along the journey. Courageous employees, ethical business owners, dedicated educators, and determined students who had been inspired by her story. During the book launch, Sharon reflected on the extraordinary life she had built from a moment of courage. Sometimes, a single decision can change not only our life, but the lives of many others. The key is to be prepared to act when that moment arrives. Margaret, though frail with age, participated in the launch via video conference from her home. Her speech was brief but emotional. Sharon, you turned our company into a family. You turned our crisis into opportunity. You turned fear into hope. Thank you for having courage when we needed it most. The book included an epilogue written jointly by Margaret, Jennifer, Michelle, and Dylan, each reflecting on how Sharon had impacted their lives and careers. The collective text became one of the most moving parts of the book, showing how a single person can create positive ripples that spread across generations. 30 years after entering that meeting room and hearing the Arabic words that would change everything, Sharon was honored with a statue in Gary. The statue, located in front of Ferndale Metalworks, showed a woman in work uniform holding a book and looking toward the horizon. The statue's unveiling brought together thousands of people, including former employees of the metalworks, students from the Cultural Center, local business owners, and representatives from international organizations. Sharon, now 82 years old, spoke briefly. This statue does not represent me. It represents all American workers who quietly contribute to the success of their companies and communities. The unveiling ceremony included cultural performances in several languages, symbolizing the cultural diversity Sharon had always promoted. Children from the Cultural Center recited poems in Portuguese, Arabic, English, and Spanish, demonstrating how the educational legacy continued to thrive. Margaret had passed away peacefully 2 years earlier, at 85. Her final wish was that part of her inheritance be dedicated to expanding the work of the Sharon Mitchell Foundation. Jennifer honored her mother's wish, ensuring the legacy of valuing people would continue for future generations. During the ceremony, Jennifer announced the creation of the Margaret Ferndale Institute for Participatory Management, which would offer free courses for small business owners on how to implement employee appreciation practices. The institute would be managed in partnership with Sharon's foundation. Michelle, now a respected international consultant, had written several books on corporate fraud prevention. Her work was used as a reference in universities around the world. She always credited her mother as her primary inspiration and mentor. Dylan had become the American ambassador to the United Arab Emirates, using his language skills and cultural knowledge to strengthen diplomatic and trade relations between the countries. He often cited his grandmother's teachings in international negotiations. Ferndale Metalworks, under the leadership of Jennifer and later her daughter Sophia, continued to prosper. The company had become an American multinational with operations in 12 countries, always maintaining the principles of participatory management and cultural appreciation established decades before. The Harold Ferndale Cultural Center had expanded into a network of 20 units in various American cities. Thousands of people had benefited from the language programs, fraud prevention, and cultural exchange. The center had become a model replicated in other countries in Latin America. 35 years after the initial incident, documentaries about Sharon's story were still being produced and shown at universities and business conferences. Her story had become a classic case study on moral courage, intercultural communication, and organizational transformation. Sharon, at 87, still occasionally participated in virtual events, sharing reflections on her extraordinary journey. Her message remained consistent. Knowledge is power, but only when combined with the courage to use it for the benefit of others. The Sharon Mitchell Foundation had become an international organization, operating in 15 countries and offering education, fraud prevention, and cultural exchange programs. The foundation's work had impacted millions of people, creating a global network of individuals committed to ethical communication and valuing diversity. Michelle and Dylan continued expanding the family legacy, each in their respective areas of expertise. The Mitchell family had become synonymous with social transformation through education and moral courage. 40 years after hearing the Arabic words that would change her life forever, Sharon's story continued to inspire new generations. Elementary schools taught about her courage, universities analyzed her contributions to intercultural communication, and companies implemented practices based on her teachings. The fundamental lesson of her story remained relevant and powerful. A single person, armed with knowledge, courage, and compassion, can change not only their own life, but also the lives of countless others. The echo of her brave decision in that meeting room continued to reverberate through generations, proving that acts of moral courage have a lasting impact that transcends time, borders, and cultures. End of story. And you? What do you think about Sharon's courage? Have you ever been in a situation where you had to choose between staying silent or speaking the truth? Tell us in the comments what your favorite part of this story was. And if you've made it this far, don't forget to leave your like and subscribe to the channel for more moving stories like this one.